I just got out of the theaters from witnessing Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania on the big screen, and I have some things that I want to talk about for this film, guys. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into the review. Let's go. What's going on, you guys? The Demigod back on Demigod to bring you another movie review for Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania, aka Ant-Man 3, the third installment in the MCU into the Ant-Man trilogy. And you know, going into this film, of course, the critics came out before this film dropped, and there was a lot of negative reviews, so I was a bit worried walking in to see this film. And after witnessing it, I could see why the critics were split down the middle on this film, though I gotta say, I had a much better time than I thought I would with this movie, and I have some interesting things that I want to say about it, some good and some bad. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into the review. So first things first, the plot of this movie begins with Scott Lang's daughter sending out a signal into the quantum realm, which is then picked up by Kang the Conqueror of all people, and due to that happening, they are pulled into the quantum realm and must deal with this new threat that they face. And so that's pretty much the setup right there. But this film does like to take its time on getting to Kang the Conqueror. It takes about, all the way up until the halfway mark of this film to finally really get into that character, really introduce him and get to learn his backstory and his motivations and who he is as a person. And until we get there, leading up to that point, this film is mostly a science fiction movie. In fact, it feels like it pulls very heavily from the Guardians of the Galaxy and the Thor Ragnarok inspirations, how otherworldly those worlds feel. That's how the quantum realm feels inside of this film. It's very similar. It's very goofy and wacky, and some stuff comes across not as good, while other things are like, oh, I like what they did there, and so I did like what we got with the quantum realm. I liked that we explored here further and deeper and seeing all these other worlds that are existing inside of it right below the realm that we're used to seeing. However, I also feel like this has already been done better in the MCU by better films like the ones I mentioned previously, and because of that, it just lacks a little bit of originality, along with the fact that we're following characters that we're never truly fully invested in or fully care about their situation and what their outcome would be. You're kind of just along for the ride in a very uninvested way, and that kind of takes you a step back as an audience member of this film. And while I liked some things in the first act of this movie and part of the second act of this film, there was also some bad parts mixed in there until we get to the main purpose, the main reason everyone's going to watch this movie, of course. Kang the Conqueror. How did he do? He's fantastic inside of this film. I gotta say, he's a fantastic villain. I love what they did with his character. He comes across as ominous and menacing and powerful, like a man who will stop nothing to achieve his goals, no matter who stands in the way. And during a lot of scenes in this film, they'll just completely cut the track while Kang the Conqueror speaks, and it makes for some really riveting moments. I really appreciated that. I loved seeing the way his powers are displayed, his backstory is set up. This was definitely the perfect opportunity to introduce Kang to the MCU, because of course we're dealing with Ant-Man, who deals with the quantum realm, which eventually leads us into Kang. Though I gotta say, I do not like how successful Ant-Man and his team are during certain scenes against Kang. I won't speak more on that due to spoilers, but I feel like if he's going to be this next level multiversal MCU threat, we can't really have him getting cleaned up by a C-list hero whatsoever. So that was a bit of a problem I had with this film. And as an MCU fan, I will say though, this one is definitely worth the watch because it has so much connective tissue. It ties in so many things, and if you're an MCU fan, this is definitely an essential watch because you're going to need to know what happens in this film so that it makes sense much later once this bigger plan unfolds that the MCU is clearly, leading towards. And with that being said, make sure you stay tuned for the end post-credit scenes at the end of this film because they're very important to the overall story arc going on here. Now, when earlier in the review, when I said this movie is goofy at times, trust me, it's to the point where it's honestly sort of disrespectful to the audience. For instance, I'll give you one example. There's a character in this film named MODOK. Now, MODOK is a character from earlier in the Ant-Man series. However, he's brought back to this film. He's existing in the quantum realm, and when you see him, when the movie reveals him, they just make this huge joke out of his appearance, and it looks absolutely horrible. I mean, it's some of the worst character designing I've seen inside the MCU. I hate the way it appears on screen. Like, man, it took me out of the film so many times. It leaves such a bad taste in your mouth. In fact, it looks exactly like George Lopez's character from Spy Kids, if you've ever seen that movie, and it definitely didn't belong in here. Man, I don't know who designed that, who came up with that, who put that in the film and then kept putting it in the film. What's wrong with you? It could have been removed completely and it would have just been a better movie. That simple. But with all that being said, guys, I feel like a majority of MCUs at the very least get the passing grade, because this is definitely a watchable movie inside the MCU, and like I said, as an MCU fan, it will eventually become very quintessential, very important, and very necessary. However, if you aren't an MCU fan, you do not care what's going to happen in the future of the MCU, I really can't see a purpose or a reason for you to go out and view or see this movie, if I'm going to be completely honest with you. And while I enjoyed this film much more than I expected to, much more than I thought I would, it definitely has its laughably bad moments that were not necessary whatsoever, didn't need to be included in here. And I gotta say, I did like this better than Thor: Love and Thunder, and I did like this better than Black Widow. In all honesty, I should have probably rated those a bit lower when I originally reviewed those films. And as far as phase 5 of the MCU in general, I know, a majority of people aren't really feeling it, aren't really liking it like that, but to be honest, I've liked a majority of the films to come out. I think they've been pretty good, with a few stinkers in there that we could have definitely done without, or at the very least they could have been a little bit better as a movie overall. But that pretty much wraps up my review right there, guys, so I hope you enjoyed it. I'm curious to know how you feel about Ant-Man Quantumania down in the comment section down below. If you don't know why you're on Demigod ENT, do commentaries, reactions, and reviews. If you're seeing that in the right place, man, hit subscribe, hit the like button. I drop multiple videos a week on the channel, so you can expect that of me. And if you don't already know, I am the Demigod, the chosen one, here on Demigod ENT, and I'm out of this thing, man. As far as future content, I got some banger videos dropping next, some more movie reactions, more specifically to something considered a classic film. I also have some new series coming out that we'll be reacting and reviewing on the channel. It's just pretty much tradition at this point to review the MCU film, so I felt like I really had to get this one out. But without further ado, I'm out of this thing. Catch you on the next video. Peace.